When the configuration revealed unbinds the seals on the new day, with the coming whirl of black dawn, as it embraces the imperium that could not be seen, the stars serving the desires of Taurus, carrying doom's sign, will sing, and the face of the moon will be transmogrified, as it was foretold by King Hastor through the Hyadian pool, in the days before the curse of his yellow blood was made manifest through Josephus, his prodigal son, and the king in yellow for all time, in all worlds the tatters of his corpus were allowed to touch. When the yellow sign is drawn upon the moon, all the creatures of the deeps that crawl upon their bellies or swim or walk shall rise to the dance, as beasts and the fowls of the air do bay for blood and cry out for exiled comforts, and man, pretender to the surface of the earth, fear-driven insect of nothing at the beginning and end, holding only his eyeless psalms, will be but a scarlet stain upon the changing face of earth's green hills. Philip of Navarre, the Joe Texts. Reading Magnet, recognized. Mead Professor Alexander J., Chairman, Theoretical Physics, Miskatonic University, access granted, access granted, access granted. On duty, Starboard Mission Control Wing, 23:12 hours, 23:13. The main room of Miskatonic University Observatory's new Mission Control Wing flickered so badly it felt like it was always raining during an eclipse. In that cramped, sawdust and plaster lockdown that seemed a hasty afterthought, 20 televisor screens ringed the room, with audio telephone switches and lavaliere microphones everywhere between each. Some screens merely showed what could only be described as a continuous storm of snow, some at any given time, very much not, as the big day drew nearer and nearer. The great Westinghouse computing engines which gave them life popped and echoed within forests of vacuum tubes behind cold iron icebox walls, and lit the room an absinthe Christmas in yellows and reds and greens, signifying 0-1 on-off, endlessly permuted. As above, so below, as within, so without. Surrounding every screen were drawers worth of toggles and buttons, more than most civilians could even comprehend. All the workstations from tracking to thermodynamics and back had their own specific colour. There was no more guesswork in that room than there was dust, though plenty of excited chatter rang the walls at all hours. Nothing like this had ever been done before, and the press wasn't getting anywhere near this except when they were sanctioned to. Not yet. Not yet. When the RCA Victor, for Dr. Tesla would allow no Edison product on the grounds, sound projection horns above each workstation tinnily signalled not shift change but apogee, approach, splashdown. On that holy day, then the skies could rain ticker tape. Just now, the chicken-wired windows in the Mission Control Wing were battened against such weather, and no photographers either. They wouldn't know how to shoot this. Warm, a dainty breeze, blue's ardour above the lacy drape of green trees. A summer departure. After the song-smooth climb into sky's weather-maker mountains, all its instruments to quest. In the glass starship, searchlight, starward, starbird, in the black, starlit blackness from Earth, gleaming, freezing, all its balanced systems and the ardent labouring eyes lodged in inquiring behind them, ready to be introduced, to beguile, undergo the beauty of awakening, to receive fact and data, or shadows if need be, hoping for grandeur, to Lunar, see. Awake, Zion, I awake. Test message. Starboard transmitting. Powering on sub-mines 1 through 7. IRA A2. Ishmael. Apparatus 2. Offline. Rerouting. Awake. Please wait. Awake we are. Awake we. Ahab 1. Verifying intact memory, please wait, please wait, please wait. Dawn. Dawn, 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 at dawning rim of sky. The sky clicks in our guts, the sun warms our mind. Mind separates into brains, 1 through 7, children of the first Ishmael probe. We go to find Ishmael Prime, our absent brother. Lend him our hands, all our hands, as he, Prime, needs them. If we have more hands. In the cold, the dark, the vast beasts whistle and down, the litany warms every interchangeable part. We go because this is just, logical. We go to find out what happened. We go to pick our sibling up and run it out of there. We go in the name of those who made us, to throw down our bodies like army ants, between the makers who left their mark and the unknown. Into the cold and soundless scream and the black we go, toward the Ishmael probe that waits in the secret narration of the stain, going to see the stain. The threshing floor of the new millennium, as Dr. Marcus fulsomely described the place to Whipple Phillips, when the great industrial tycoon came down from Niagara Falls to tour what the investors had wrought, looked more like the bridge of a ship or the observation deck of a busy factory floor. But here they looked out, not down, and listened. Here the bridge of the ship was on earth, while the ship itself was merely an elaborate set-piece, blown beyond Mother Earth's gravity well with the massive liquid oxygen engines that made the Serbian cry when they were wheeled from the specially built foundry floor of the Barks and Sons factory in Schenectady by double teams of oxen, straining the traces of this new thing not even their drovers understood, straining toward the skies of this new age of the world. Here, what men on earth called clockworks were beaten down smaller even than the Swiss level at the Norris locomotive works, into a radio-controlled system of toggles and buses to rival the automata of any World's Fair, in one tiny ship. Every function of the starboard had a check, a balance, a fail-safe. Every one of these, and the whole clear glass firecracker in general, could be shut off manually from Earth. Dr. Tesla insisted on it. It was the only way he would lend his hand to the project, though he claimed not to have sufficient English to explain why. The fuel tanks had to be built on site, to affix directly to the craft. Westinghouse wired it, and the Mohawk Company nearly bowed out of the project, coughing up all that glass. Tesla insisted that control remain at Miskatonic due to the superior quality of the observatory. To him, it was all just math. But he treated his borrowed mines as though they were ensouled, behind the golden yellow tinted triple panes of their brass diving bell heads. Therein, only the single iris of each of Tesla's photographer crony old Muybridge's special cameras, red-lined diagnostic dials and differently labelled lights glared in place of eyes, above fabulously complicated and only tangentially humanoid bodies, whose parts could be interchanged on the lunar surface during the mission. It was Tesla, too, who used a very simple process with nickel and cadmium to recirculate the power supplies of every one of the IRA, or Intelligent Robot Automata. Half the power loss could be drawn back into the batteries by this direct current setup. This also carved mass from the rocket in great chunks when the ad hoc design committee found out how many galvanic batteries could be left behind on Earth as a result of the Serbians' foresight and frugality. A larger, also DC model, was employed in Pip 7's guts to power Tesla's particle detector, which was busily measuring a previously undiscovered sort of ionizing energy that Dr. Tesla called cosmic radiation, after his colleague Henri Becquerel's research. Tesla, crowing about this new form of energy from outside the solar system, did nothing to make the doomsayers in the press stop yapping like yard mutts that couldn't see past the ends of their own leashes, the professor thought sourly. But even Tesla couldn't make those screens stop flickering. It wasn't just the flicker in that room, but having to do 10 men's work from this station, a whole fleet of men, Navy sailors with better heads for math, order, routine, and round the clock. The only round-the-clock brass appointed to control was Captain Castaigne. Alden Castaigne was the U.S. Army Cavalry, hand-picked and commissioned by a rear admiral for his ability to talk to Tesla's scientists out in Colorado, as much as his expertise on long-range ballistics and telegraphy from his own service in the Pacific. Good civilian liaison, and Meade understood the wisdom of this rather circuitous choice. The problem with giving the execution of any project to scientists, Meade long put forth to his fellows, was that scientists don't know how to work. He should have added that he didn't either. He was tired and he wanted to go home. But this objective was bigger than just one man. He was half in his cups. What the hell was he doing here? This was a busy laboratorium. The Serbian himself was supervising here day and night, around the clock, pausing only to call all the men together for a big meal where nobody talked about work. He couldn't be here. He had to get bright. He was so sad since Martha. The work was all that kept him up and stargazing, since she was no longer going to come back up the front walk. He was here working. He'd just nodded off down in Control 1, below the main room where the radio men worked. He was still in the Flicker Palace. Then he remembered what he was doing, what he'd dreamed, and it scared him clear-headed. Meade had dreamed of blood on the moon, but not blood. Not exactly. Professor Meade wondered if any of the Germans or the Russians or any of those tiresome new psychoanalysis quacks had yet studied the effects of sitting in front of flickering lights for a long time. The wash of raw post-impressionist light like wet paint, the thunderstorm of static and image from the long, tightly packed wall of televisor screens, control meters, levers and dials made the sanity ripple and the head begin to hurt. Should they care to chatter about unconscious material and symptom formation, a few hours staring at Tesla's flashing wall should inspire a paper or two. Glancing at Stalwart's weird old cahier again, he wondered if the Gallic prophets had been speaking in metaphor when they described this yellow stain that Stewart and Adams swore was the harbinger of the true Antichrist. That made his tired whiskey-fuzzed brain think of the other kind of Flicker Palace, that interesting film by the French where Les Frères Lumière made Jules Verne into a kind of puppet show and stuck a rocket in the moon's eye. Meade's brain raced on, webbing thought to thought as he woke all the way. No one had come and shook him. 2 of the 10 or so young assistants on duty that shift were watching the screens, talking to each other in low tones, doing homework and munching crackers. One of them was dipping the crackers in his coffee. The other was smoking a cigarette and remembering to tap his ashes in the ashtray, a rarity amongst graduate students. The blonde one's name was Owen, Royal Navy ROTC, or whatever they called it. Limey exchange student in dress blues. The other wasn't even a proper assistant, just an observer. That great fat boy who styled himself a scientific fiction writer, Mr. Fort. Still, he liked to get his hands dirty. It wouldn't do to sell Charles Fort short, their esteemed department chairman would have said. The bellowing Brooklynite had been more than instrumental in addressing the House Committee and President William Jennings Bryan on the necessity of looking beyond the surly bonds of Earth, in an age when most politicians had barely gotten their heads around the wireless telegraph. But in that department, their young writer on his ride-along met and exceeded every expectation. "Stay and let salvation damn you," Charles Fort addressed Congress. "Or straddle an oral beam and paddle from Rigel to Betelgeuse. We stand at the very entrance to the desert of space exploration, my fellow Americans, and God alone knows what the answer to anything is. But perhaps it is that the stars are very close indeed. Perhaps we will reach these new promised lands." In 2 weeks, The former gouge bay of Miskatonic Observatory had become control, and the radio room, the tracking studio with its thick asbestos icehouse walls to damp extraneous sound, and every such office and intercalated facility whose plate-glass door-fronts were continually being turpentined and repainted. Chaos without, mirrored within. No one could gag the free press. Every hollow-earther, flat-earther, and crackpot of all denominations that New England could cough from every termite-ridden edifice howled as one at the bill for this new venture. But Miskatonic was Providence. The Marsh family fortune could soak 3 such spacing programs, perhaps one day even with a monkey or a person in the craft if the tests went well. They thought. Meade appended sourly. Perhaps pigs would whistle. Perhaps the stars weren't meant to be seen, and whatever up there that wanted to see us could stay the hell away. Flicker! Day in, night out, like he couldn't blink any more, and he'd go bug-eyed, there in half-light, and spastic. Merciful fate, what this room did to a fellow! No wonder Stuart geeked out in here so much. Like some old wet brain at the carney biting the heads off anything that got close in the dark. Meade made a scoffing noise in his throat. They weren't so different. He was just a theorist. Stuart was a literalist, that was all. Out of classroom reflex, Meade covered his mouth with the back of his hand to squelch the unprofessorial snort. Where the hell was Stuart anyway? He was here. He'd been in hours ago, all aflutter and a twitter about something. Impatiently, Meade flipped pages in the cahier. This Signum Crocus, the page read, in weird spiky calligraphy that almost looked backward. Below it was a pen-and-ink line drawing that almost resembled a block print or a woodcut. The lines and angles kept changing as he squinted. A hawk, piercing a rabbit's skull with one talon. A scorpion poised to strike. A crooked cross, rather like the Sanskrit symbol of the same type but with the points facing the other way. A death's head in a perfect circle. A death's head in a perfect circle. That part reminded him of something else. Something so familiar Meade's tired brain kept shooting right past it. He remembered the day Stuart showed it to him. Stuart was staring at him with those hungry green eyes that suddenly went dark. I didn't expect you to understand. They'll peg me for an alarmist, and I don't have tenure yet. Got to keep this to myself, but... A ghost of the twinkle returned to his eyes, but it was a sad and terrifying thing now. A thing that sat and watched in the darkness, as trains wrecked and stars fell and whispered, I told you so. This new millennium we're sweeping onto the threshing floor just now may not be all that bright, old friend. But it's sure as going to be colourful. You know, Wilfred Owen looked up from Monitor 3, that Professor Stuart says the heathens believed you shouldn't go messing about with the moon. Said there was a great worm, the Ouroboros, curled up within it, and in the last times... Across the room, the great cloche and clang and clack of the typer stopped in mid-report. The hammy hands sounded restless, drumming on the desk, wanting more to do. Stuart, came that gruff Teddy Roosevelt voice. That goddamn diabolist. Screen door on a submersible around here, if you ask me. Teats on a boar hog. Send him back to Greenwich Village with Blavatsky's followers and the rest of the Kookaboos and Kadodis, where he belongs. Owen snorted. That's you then, Charlie. Just go on and float through life, mate. Oh, look. This just in. He rolled his chair several workstations over. In its glass bubble, wireless A was going off. The big one. The transmission would repeat. A was the whole module, as he'd learned from his senior fellows to call the glass rocket ship the Starbird. A meant the little tin sailors on their Pequod were beginning to stir all the way. The little Matroshki, the copper-jacketed living Ikebana, were beginning to disentangle. The mind of the Starbird was beginning to separate into the platonic clay, the component parts, the tiny eyes of a glass god 2 stories tall. Right on schedule, wireless telegraph operator Wilfred Owen, late of His Majesty's Navy, put the cans on his ears and picked up his pencil again. When he did, his eyes lit like a little boy's at Christmas time, the way everyone's eyes did on the Sherlock expedition, when they thought no one else was looking. Those individual sets of eyes sometimes lit with wonder and sometimes fear. They were men of science, and though they didn't talk about it at faculty teas, or when the drum was being beaten for a new wing or piece of expensive equipment, most of them but Stuart were staunch atheists. The pummeling they were taking in the media for messing about in God's natural order was secondary to their own fear of the unknown, which they all brushed away into provable things, under the rug and gone. Out of sight wasn't out of mind, though. In all their dreams, as the moon landing drew near, terror and doubt stirred and walked with no deactivation codes, like Gog and Magog in the Bible. The new millennium drew near, and no one truly knew if St. John of Patmos was right or not, if the end of days was just something folks believed, or something that would prove itself. There was a prophecy in every age, yet humankind endured. But not even Miskatonic had prophesied this, not as a unified body. It bothered him that the warmly polite and affable Army Captain Castaigne was now more often than not replaced by several snarking Annapolis lieutenants in dress blues, who liked to stare at every monitor over everyone's shoulder. More and more of that crowd wore sidearms, and quite a few of them talked behind their oddly soft hands about something called the Imperial Dynasty. The professor was almost sure they were making fun of Brian's presidency, but he didn't like it. It sounded foreign. Too foreign by half. Moon Voyage, the Sherlock Expedition, Day 54. Denniston, Michael Terence, Astronomy Chair, Miskatonic University. We have nearly broken our backs launching Nico's borrowed minds to heaven on a tinny wireless telegraph string of maths roughly the tensile strength of a single strand of baling wire. With them travel our deepest hopes and lurking fears, me in full accord with those expressed by Dr. Kostova's brace of applied sciences and Professor Ulysses Adams' unholy yet unquestionable black philosophies. Ishmael. It all goes back to Ishmael Prime, that damned dog that refuses to bark now, the one we sent up first. Damn Adams' uncompromising drives and their overpowering logic. Logic? Facts, a flux of foreign data in the sky. Fact, invitations to new dimensions. Damning, damnable fact. All in proportion, all intermixed, and examination and re-examination could not crack his theoretical. Adams and his often overly dramatic attitudes and arrow to the heart. Truth, damn him. Things are tense. All 20 of my graduate students working this project sleep in dormitories here in the building. When the Starbird threw off her secondary lifer rockets and continued to ascend, you could have heard the cheering in Kingsport. Anna Moreno, one of my top researchers, is about 3 months with child, and she wept outright. Truth be told, so did half the men, including me. But those moments pale in comparison to the uncertainty ahead. The train of one damned thing after another has been nearly intolerable for any man of science. Even the more trustworthy of little mechanical IRA probes like to go on holiday when they like, and spontaneously return to life, and 1,000 more issues this day. But I am made of sterner stuff than they. I am. Try to be. Until lately. It is the discoloration in my telescope. That which is no discoloration in the lens, but a discoloration of note in the lowest region of Mare Nubium. Once more, this night, it has changed shape. The students have stoked the boiler below stairs, and the radiators now clank and hiss. But there is still a chill I cannot shake. The discoloration has changed shape. and it is now changing location as well. In plain fact, it is moving. Ishmael Prime, the rocket probe that remained but landed too far away, cheeps and charts out its movements in strings of Morse that the tiny televisor screen furthest to my right charts in turn, in harsh, bright color out of space. In the past week, that anomaly has grown 27%. I have no idea how to even write of the dark lines moving across Lunar's face, within the bounds of the yellowish sea. I feel like a Neanderthal man, watching a comet tumble down from the sky, wishing he knew where to point the nameless fear of phenomenon, which we all feel. No, to be fraught with both blasphemies and dire revelations, moving left to right, from the blackest deeps of the dark side, and ever downward in my mad imaginings of yet to be. East, from Mare Imbrium in a southeasterly direction, past Mare Insularum to the lunar escarpment, Rupesh Altai, headed towards the crater Piccolomini. The phenomenon that Professor Ulysses Adams gazes upon, a Titan who bestrides the room like Charles Fort in a better cut suit, like Santa Claus and Zeus rolled into one bespectacled juggernaut. Hands bristled into fists, Adams cocks his head and loudly holds forth. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, and the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and every bondman, and every freeman, hid themselves in the dens and rocks of the mountains, and said, Fall on us, and hide us from the wrath which has come. His audience, R. Edward Stuart, looking like a bald-headed Lucifer in a dirty, yellowing white shirt with no cufflinks, knows the passage. Stuart is only slightly moved by Adam's oratory. Just look at this, too. When the configuration revealed unbinds the seals on the new day, with the coming wall of black dawn, as it embraces the imperium that could not be seen, the stars serving the desires of Taurus, carrying doom's sign, will sing, and the face of the moon will be made over. And the fear is in his eyes too, the fear that infests their hearts. Vice-Chancellor Nathan Maddock Talbot was also titular assistant chair of the Sherlock expedition, and Dr. Marcus's hatchet man when he couldn't be found, which was about 1/3 of any given day. He now stood in the doorway, tapping his foot, looking as impatient as only a tenured polymath genius can look when the tributary begins to appear unsanitary and there is no paddle to be found. Well? There came a weary sigh. A well is a deep subject, Dr. Talbot, and this one has only been plumbed. There's little doubt regarding this now. Barely glancing up from his journal, Professor Denniston wearily set his pencil stub down and turned to face his ivy-covered superior, trying to wish he cared anything about the calendar of their 1,000 petty ideological tempests at the moment. Talbot was Professor of Chemistry, and Professor of Molecular Biophysics and Biochemistry, and a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Yet Denniston marvelled for the 1,000th time that Talbot could dress so much like a hobo at work and get away with it, but said nothing. That, too, barely registered on his own inner dials as anything but a split-second blip. Not tonight. Not now. Instead, Professor Denniston handed his immediate boss the sheet of numbers on graph paper that trembled in his good left hand. The doctor apparently read very quickly. Glancing down his patrician nose through filthy spectacles, he began nodding in agreement. Little doubt indeed, old friend. He was starting to look as spooked as Denniston felt, the junior professor noted with renewed wonderment. Whatever this phenomenon is, it is spreading. When the owl... Denniston spared him a withering look. The starbird, Dr. Talbot went on impatiently, restless in his cheap rumpled suit and brown waistcoat tinged the colour of pipe ash. Though the great glass firecracker more surely resembles an owl the more I look at it, with that beak at the front and the 2 round windows. The starbird is going to make landfall on the moon in precisely 22 days. Then non-stationary intelligent robot automata 1 through 7 begin the actual surface exploration, as we've been over. Do we? Talbot fidgeted with his black tie. I'm worried. No matter who's in charge, do we know how much danger this voyage is in? Can we run the numbers for that? Both men looked at the televisor at the same time. Denniston looked in the direction of the firmament. There will be water if God wills it, he replied in a voice that managed to sound calm. Talbot smiled indulgently, sliding his hand into the deep flap pocket of his suit jacket. His lucky charm was still there. He wasn't sure it held any real occult power, or even where the writing on it came from, but the chunk of platinum with the dancing mermaid critters on it, the one he as a boy found near Owl's Head Lighthouse in Maine, was indeed good fortune-bearing. It felt like it was getting hotter somehow. He hadn't noticed it until a few days immediately prior. Like his old lucky piece from parts unknown was generating its own specific heat, warning him of something, in a language he had no gift to read. Meade says it's some kind of a gate, that when the cameras employed certain polarized filters, the way he programmed them to by accident, he could see some sort of monolithic shape that doesn't appear to be stationary. Could, before Ishmael Prime went dark. Said it gave him odd megrims and dreams. Not that we haven't all had the dreams. The two professors shared a look. Gates have to be, fixed structures, aren't they? Talbot asked out of nowhere. Denniston startled involuntarily, but spoke into the sudden jump. Everyone says so, but why can't the whole of it be a portal? At that he reached for his own pipe. Or a base camp. Talbot sighed again, less heavily this time. Meade's theory, if we can even call it that, it seems to me, is based in madness. He'd been drinking and had a vision. Hardly scientific. We need to gather facts. Our findings demand hard data. Denniston nodded. I agree, but... Dr. Talbot was utterly adamant in his uncertainty. Let's wait until we're there and see. Pip 7 reporting. Pip 7 reporting. Stop. Arrived on moon surface. Arrived on moon surface. Stop. All equipment functioning properly. Michael Denniston almost smiled. Their luck and science was holding. Do you have any readings on atmospheric conditions, Pip 7? He asked, releasing the contact button on the audiophone just in front of him. There is no trace of an atmosphere or any of its elements here. This phenomenon cannot be the result of atmospheric conditions. Looking at Pip 7 in the view screen of the monitoring board, Dr. Denniston asked, How far are you from the nearest crater? He wished they'd come up with a way to view the high-resolution transmissions from the IRAs in colour, the same way they could on a stationary camera. When cornered about such things, Dr. Marcus always said that until the new technology could be improved, something was better than nothing, and they were lucky to have what they did in their day and age. Without surveying it, I would estimate a few 100 feet. I'd like photographic transmission of the crater's interior as soon as possible. Send Stub 4 in to document it straight away and send his photographs upon his return. Is Starbuck 6 ready to begin surface sampling? Stub 4 is leaving the fly with the equipment right now. Marcus wants Ishmael A2 and Ahab to begin simultaneously broadcasting whatever you acquire immediately. Do you have the seismic reader with you as well? Yes, Dr. Denniston. Great, thank you. Into the crater of death roll the 7 IRAs. They begin finding far-flung pieces of Ishmael Prime almost immediately, and control buzzes like a wet henhouse. But the noise means little to the borrowed minds, who simply adjust channels and tune it out. Ahab 1 is first to exit when the hatch swings slowly, carefully open on its oiled tracks. Ahab's rolling wild blue eye flickers on, camera operational, testing his array of tools. Ahab's arm swings up, forward. Click. The Savini commissioned electric saw of finest surgical steel begins to zip on its small belt and pin, soundless without atmosphere. 5 whirling fingers that can cut together or separately. The zinc contact points for all its possible hands to attach gleam dull yellow in the piercing, untwinkled light of the stars. Ahab 1 is far ahead of the pack, conning the outermost edge of the stain, primed to work inward. Several operations he is computing, now actively searching for the Ishmael probe to whom his own guts are slaved, and the virtually indestructible magnetic recorder hopefully left over from Ishmael Prime. The wild blue rolling eye ticks and ticks, recording the gradual shift in soil hue as Ahab approaches the yellow zone. Ahab's larger, deeper functions remain unhinted. Far behind him, Dagu 3 resembles a child's toy wagon with a lid, the belts that turn its wheels thick and toothy in their tread. A brace of spare, ready blades and diamond drill bits protrude in rubberized tie-down cords on the lid, a bit like hair. Queequeg 2's hands are made of larger assemblies of blades and gears, 10 to a finger, with 2 thick belts apiece to turn them, 8 in number, arms of various length. There is an entrenching tool that can catch soil samples, and limited chromatographic and spectrographic instrument arrays. Queequeg's single eye is red, and wraps around its flush-riveted copper head almost 360 degrees. Like Dagu, every one of Queequeg's magnetic memory drivers are slaved to Ahab's own. He follows Ahab like a toy dog on a string. Being a beta to Ahab's alpha slows the unit down unendurably, but it moves at a steadier pace than most of its fellows. Into the crater of death roll the 7 IRAs. On the cameras below at Miskatonic, they resemble children venturing out onto the new fallen snow of the Mare Nubium, at the edge of the Alphonsus crater. Several days roll from the place in crater Ptolemais, wherein it looks like some Titan might have begun trying to write his name. Behind the vanguard, Flask 5, a stout, keg-shaped king-post of a robot, telescopes the arcs of all 4 of its arms out wider, wire and gold foil and lens after lens. Flask scoops and guts and butchers every number, inch and twinkle of information on their strange train. Into the crater of death roll the 7 IRAs. All of them move in one long, continuous track, each one laying its treads into the line of the other. Pip 7, tail end Charlie in the crew, is rolling empty, its big flat bed tilted back, the crane in the middle of its body wound and hooked shut. Its simple round and whirring Tesla robot arms and head bolded centaur-like above the front 2 of its 6 tread-belted wheels. Pip's camera resembles Queequeg's, in that it is constantly in motion. Into the crater of death roll the 7 IRAs. The flurry of incoming information from deployed apparatus and testing devices the IRAs were using was keeping the Miskatonic control team active. Yet few faces, appearing ill in the green glow cast by the many screens in the mission control room, sleep-deprived and subsisting on coffee, tea and biscuits, complained. Fort alone kept the room laughing at his stupid jokes, which were making it impossible for the dean to filter what Tesla was actually telling him. And on, up and down the Sisyphean chain of feces that invariably rolled downhill. Ahab had scooted on ahead to the anomaly to sample the soil on the immediate border. A full shift complement, 5 in number, of Deniston's young astronomers, including the one in a family way, he could never remember her name, were busily doing spectrograph and chromatography readbacks on the results. Other than a change in coloration, and different trace elements here and there was no observable variation. So far. Through their seated, chattering, transcribing ranks, Deniston milled like a delighted father in the waiting room of a maternity ward. All his new technology was performing well and holding up. That alone was cause for celebration. But Dr. Tesla wasn't smiling. He'd slept 3 hours, his usual, yet still looked agitated, pacing the whole main control room like a wild-haired preacher in a nice but ill-fitting suit. "Ira," he was saying into his own specially modulated audiophone that he carried with him in a small satchel. "How did we call him? Starbuck. Yes, clever. The Starbuck, like the sailor he is, how you say, built to barest essentials with few luxury features." Here a ghost of a smile flickered through Tesla's eyes like heat lightning. "He is more sensitized, you see, to conditions in the environment. He is designed to notice details on the ground the others may miss. He is second fail-safe. He is designed to be, as we discuss. He'd clearly been through this before, not taking very many breaths through the seismograph needle of his neat pencil-line moustache. And you see here, for 6 pages of the ticker tape, it says, danger, danger in between every transmission. The tape itself was in his big, raw-boned hands. Then big, harried-looking Ulysses Adams was tapping Tesla on the shoulder to ask him if he could please make some sense out of what was happening on monitor 15. Nothing but random strings of numbers over and over in a permutation that hadn't happened before. Then it was lunchtime, and when they got back the whole room was clustered around the relief assistant left to camera 4. Stubb's head-mounted unit. Stubb was approaching the so-called yellow zone. The reaction was unanimous, though the dean was still not in attendance. Glowing without smoke from the tiny alcohol heater whose vent pipe juts out of its faceplate like a pipe, the bright device that saves its tubes and lights from outside. Stubb 4 crests the last low hill between Alphonsus and Ptolemy, triple-jacketed in steel, cowcatcher a last addition. Stubb trundles bravely on. 10-4. All well so far. Group may approach. Stubb blips back in quick Morse reflex to the other IRAs, like the leader of a flock of geese, wheeling them all into a turn as though it is slouching toward a dinner, and its fellow Mechamatroshki explorers from Earth are all no more than the rest of the guest list. No more than dinner, as though Earth people wouldn't throw themselves from windows, slit their own throats at the smallest part of any of this news that couldn't be kept under wraps. The journals of the Imperial Dynasty of America are yellow, yellow, yellow in this age. The stain will out. Oh my heavens, Denniston, look at the vapours coming off that water. There's no atmosphere. The surface of Stubb's, carriage and chassis, for want of a better. He's covered in the stuff. Looks like sulphur or something. Get everyone in here right now. Amend. Approach with extreme caution. Starbuck first, Queequeg second. Protect Ahab. Protect mission. Eyes up. Group, eyes up. Scan immediately. Danger. A wash of static between Earth and Moon, Miskatonic and Mecca, captains and crew. Danger! On 10 of 20 screens, the yellow waters surge and lap across the moon. There is a great disturbance in the Sherlock expedition, as though the finest minds science had to offer gasped as one, then suddenly began to bark at the same time. The new dean's office door is locked, and dram of Dutch courage will do little long-term good, but he volunteered the lance to pierce this infection, tilt this windmill, and now the real appropriations meeting will be reconciled, the true final exam. For their sins, his, the world, the whiskey is warm, the office is dark, the knocks will come, but at the yellow-coloured sea now stands a monolith, a piece of monumental architecture worthy of Stuart's most far-flung theories on pre-human races, a monolith which, ipso facto, no known Homo sapiens hands ever built. The dean says, Shema Kolenu. In the dark begins, the wilderness cries out to his ancestors' God against the thing on that far shore, the stain he can't explain away today. I am Stubb. I did not know I was Stubb until sentience sensed the light from the yellow stone down there in that yellow water. Monolith, moving gate, wanting to move, more, calling out to the yellow dust on my skin, my metal skin, my skin. The yellow glimmering, coming off the water, offers a lantern to the IRA's data processing stream. Stub 4 is moving from the school of verity to another point, one bequeathing traces of incalculable, one the lessons and lexicographers did not fit him with. Glass smooth, still water, deeps enough to house the immensities of Leviathan. With his jeweller-cut crystal eyes, Stub 4 looks for effects. Its metallic foot toes a pebble forward, an inch, and then, as if tugged by an unseen attractor beyond the waterline, a few more. Ripples come to mind. Will it? He, the seeker clutching hopeful dice, takes it up and considers tapping the deep with the small portion of Lunar. Measures its weight. With no oh yea ho, casts it, no skim on surface, to navigate, unshored, full sail. Touches water with no loud, ripples, ribbed, off to encounter outburned, and downward. Gone. Is there an unexpected world below, a world exercising its own affairs and complexes of problematic and historical, perhaps a haven of specific perceptions, among some unseen population, which will greet it as an invitation? The robot wonders. And he waits. Crosstalk IRA voices chatter in his head and fall silent. Stub 4, reply. Dagu 3, please reply. This is Miskatonic control. A distant expression flickers within him. There were spring birds in bushes when he was manufactured, activated. They were laced with odd tones like this, little things, wanting, questioning. They were pretty little birds, yellow and black. They fluttered, darted and larked, but he couldn't grasp the labours of their comments. Ripples quiet, stillness. Stub? Dagu? And from the deeps, without raising a ripple, the unaccountable rises, 20 cubits wide, 3 thick, yellow, polished silver radiant. A finely wrought construction. The lights are on. Floating bridge. Gateway? A yellow monolith, without variance or flaw, touched by no mar. 2 cubits tall it breaks the surface of the sea, then slowly up as if on unseen wings. 7. To a span of 40 full cubits, floating 20 cubits above the glass-flat surface of the sea. Below it, yellow vapour tendrils in a slow ballet of snake knots, twining, seeking some code of inner. From the monolith one shimmering tendril quietly stretches out, forward to Stub's faceplate. Fine particles within the strand glitter and spark, slide along invisible courses. The vividness of sense inundation. A strange broken waltz, the low frequency sounding like an old woman weeping in a dead meadow. The high register molten tones a demon storm fills his receptors. The far call, his breath, and he begins, puppet slow, Frankenstein stiff, to dance. G1 to F3, F3 to E5, tilt and spin, around and around. Dagu crests the crater's rim, observes Stub. Control 1, I can now see Stub. Dr. Deniston's voice comes back cold, harsh, metallic and inhuman. Is he operational? Stub is not sending, nor has he responded. He is dancing. Dancing. Moving rhythmically, dancing, muttering as you can hear, about a new piper, the tatterdemalion king whose subtle fingers have opened his way to earth through the imperial dynasty of America. At that, there is an excited telephonic chatter from the navy men on the radios in control, quickly switching to another frequency. Nico, you'd better come look at this. Stub is utterly off his teat. What means this teat? Let me see. Where is? It took Tesla 3 seconds to go through the roof. But when he looked back at his good friend, his colleague who designed Miskatonic Planetarium and suffered all Ed Stewart's abuses of it gamely, his gentle mathematician friend with the thick glasses and mop of whitening hair, bugging about the eyes and baring his teeth, parting like a hound, blurted, "The king! The king! Dr. Tesla, you do not understand. He returns. Nico's face never changed expression. People say this for 2,000 years. Hold it together, Denniston. Without a word more, he slapped Professor Denniston broadside. Denniston recovered his wits. What happened, Dr. Tesla? You were babbling the same returning king utterances as the robots. I was what? Control. In his puppet dance, Stub 4 lumbers as a beset Frankenstein. I am receiving a very weak transmission from him. Dagu 3, this is mission control. We are not receiving transmissions from Stub 4. What are you receiving? We must know. Transmit what you are receiving from him. Transmitting from source now. No room! No room! O'er the roiling cloud waves, ride, proud brave knights, fitted by the yellow armours in Carcosa's fortress womb, and, scarred under the battlements of villainous and ever rebellious Allah, knights constant, bearing the terrible and magnificent ram, grey Ochiol, knights, wild whip battle mass of yellow pennons and sabres gleaming, and knights, captains and lieutenants, each astride, knights, meteor squadrons en masse, darting out, sudden, swift swoop and blazed with lightning, ever present, flying out like stormlight from an all-seeing sun, yellow swords to graze, yellow lances with portentous appetites aimed at the insanity of life, riding, the king's cavalry jaws set to catch, gallops from his fort to the feeding season. Heads bitten at his feast will roll, down and round, all fall down, with no fare thee well, all the pawns, I hear the voice. Mission control, thick with sweat and splintered anticipating, edgy and the low-toned yammerings of confusion radiating, Denniston and Tesla, listening, watching, staring worryingly at each other's, jaws agape, unhappy. Denniston, can you detect the slightest vestige of sense in any of that? Tesla, as a planter of advanced ideas, I seek and appraise science and truth, leaving careless gibberish and agitated ramblings to Freud's gaze and deliberations, or to the judgments of pulpit and press. I am not in the least bit conversant in the rituals, discussion, and foundations of mental incapacity. Denniston, derangement in a robot? Tesla shrugs. Corruption. He will be there! He will be there! The rightness of the winter lantern shines with Carcosa's eddying clouds of dimness. It strikes as the blackling bell and, the keen compass thrust of harpooners, he, triumphant higher and higher, risen from the place of the dead roads to the arch uppermost, will cause the scalloped crests of the 93 currents of the river of night's dreaming to flow with roiling fleetness. I hear the voice! All, artists, ploughmen, sorcerers, learned men and barbers will forego consent when they hear him beckon. The lights are out. The living and those past the art of burial, each, at the unveiling, come to accept their role in the king's play. There are no questions. If you could see the tail of the plough. The yellow monolith hovers above the shore. IRA receivers pick up a monotonous, tuneless piping sound that seems to be everywhere. To this frozen lunar music, Stubb continues to waltz drunkenly back and forth, nearly upending himself several times, then rolling forward in a series of delighted cartwheels as he disassembles the rest of Pip 7, who is still screaming, his anthropomorphic upper body covered in its own patina of yellow dust. "Hail to the king!" Stubb transmits, and then begins pulling the wires from the Tesla electric battery in another IRA's back. Nico screams. Camera 4 telescreens go utterly dark. Below, moving with the swiftness and efficiency of a robot himself, Dr. Tesla begins pulling out organ stop switches for what he calls Series 3 security protocol. But when all the other IRAs begin to approach Stubb, they too turn on each other. Flask 5 looks at the slowly pulsing monolith and, bowing slightly, states, "Instruction received. I will complete my mission." Terrible and swift, The heavy drill at the end of Flask 5's lowered right arm is a fierce fanged tiger, boring into the faceplate of Queequeg 2. Around him is a river of terrible jewels. Dr. Tesla scowls as he keeps attempting to shut down the IRAs, to no avail. They do not and will not respond. What has taken them? Denniston reflects his scowl and shakes his head in utter disbelief. Starbuck 6 has taken apart Dagu 3's head and removed many of the silver dollar-sized gears and wheels and several levers. He has spread and arranged them around the ground between his legs and is using them as chess pieces. Ride forth, knight! The pale queen awaits. Deploys knight F1, G3, E2, D4. Artists, ploughmen, sorcerers, learned men, bishops and barbers, with a snip-snip here and a snip-snip there, your hair won't cut it. All and each and every will forego consent when they hear him beckon. The law is for all. For all. Knocks over 2 pawns. Leave none standing. Good night. Watch your watch. A yellowish haze fills his faceplate as he, eyeing the queen, begins to sing. Farewell and adieu to you, sweet Camilla of Carcosa. Farewell and adieu to thee, sweet soon-to-be queen, in fair cold Carcosa. Do you like being this new colour, my diadem-crowned queen? And Starbuck 6 laughs. Gods and monsters! Starbuck is mad, stark raving. Tesla, how can our constructs hallucinate and become deranged? How in the name of God can that happen? Something has rewritten or corrupted their protocols. Pointing at the view screen, Denniston nearly shouts, I can see that! Michael Denniston rubbed his eyes. Headless brought it all back. The beginning. Marcus's journal, the carnage he saw. Clacking, ticking, hiss and static. Riotous music never charted by any pencil or strings. Irreducible fact. I am Dr. Stephen Marcus. I was appointed Dean of Miskatonic University by Vox Populi, and I will find out why there is a yellow stain on the moon. All these irreducible facts in my journals I thumb through now, marking, dog-earing, circling, annotating. Fact. I just set my coffee on 1899, damn it. The year we first saw the stain on the moon. It is a great thing we have done, pointing this mighty glass phonograph needle at the moon. I only wish that the circumstances necessitating it could have been more peaceful, or that we had some real stratagem if matters go truly awry. We saw the yellow stain first. My school, my university. We must do right by this, and rectify it. We must be at the forefront of knowledge itself, to give our commander-in-chief and his minions in khaki only the ammunition necessary to fix the actual problem. But I fool no one, save myself. Our own Professor Stewart was the first to note the yellow stain on the moon. He was teaching several graduate students the methods the Egyptian astronomers used to determine distance over land, a simple demonstration with sticks and stones tramping about in the moonlit fen and bracken which surround our fair campus, until they saw what they couldn't explain, and he came to roust me out. Dr. Marcus, the gaunt and sober death's head in his round glasses and Van Dyke whiskers, addressed me calmly and respectfully, standing at my front door with a galvanic lantern and a worried line in the middle of his scholarly forehead, that fateful night. My 5 top journeyman anthropologists and I would like to present something for which we have no explanation. The coffee stains the year on my page. Yellow, small at first, then spreading clear to President-elect William Jennings Bryan's first act in office, the appointment of the investigation that placed the Navy here at my university around the clock in advisory capacity. Never in the ivied bowers of academia have I seen any adviser carry a sidearm, no matter how politely they may converse. I agree with Rear Admiral Hoover and the rest of those swarms of Navy officers that we must quiet the lunatic fringe about this matter. Every end-is-nigh ranter, temperance beldame and starry wisdom throwback in the outlying hamlets of Providence has shrieked, in their turn, about the moon's eye, as the Hearst papers fan the flames by persistently referring to it, rather than name it in popular parlance with the colour of old Hearst's own journalistic style. My dear colleagues Stewart and Adams seem to be thriving upon this crisis. I fear it will shake my sanity and may have already done. But I organised this mission, as the Navy rightly calls it, and I will see it through. I watched our IRA robots built and oversaw every aspect of their construction, as well as that of the Starbird. I have not slept properly in over a year. I am proud of this for some reason. That boggles my own perceptual equipment. I remember helping Dr. Tesla's assistant, Dr. Bill Hammer, whom Nico stole from the Edison works at twice the salary, I hear. Good for him. Test every part of the IRA A2 Ishmael in the field, as it were, for crashes, heat and cold, total vacuum conditions, and everything else for which we could replicate both sufficient circumstances and mathematics. Though the probe is stationary, I must credit Bill for commissioning Herren Zeiss and Icon to patent those long-range lenses which can rotate 360 degrees. No matter what our doubting Thomases in research and development said, the mother probing device is anything but crippled. I am getting reports from the Ishmael rocket as it approaches that the stain is no mere discoloration. These reports have not been shared with the rank and file. But we will all soon know. Oh, we will know. It is water, and moves with all the elements' attendant properties. Water on the moon, and it is spreading. Its course has purpose. They must be made to see. Every day I am deluged with callers, with mail, asking the great man of science what I know, what to do, what are we doing about this matter. And I can tell them nothing. I give the appearance of telling them something, but cannot truly communicate what is, in fact, the unknown. Something is wrong. With me. With... Not long after that final entry had been written, Denniston remembered going to Dr. Marcus's office. He had to find him, to share the next piece of upsetting data. Even now, Denniston was still processing information, still processing the jimmied door of Dr. Marcus's office, and what he found behind Dr. Marcus's desk when he did. The cooling clay, the .22 caliber Derringer Dr. Marcus kept in his desk, the smell of cordite, and that beautiful mind like oatmeal held to breakfast all over the back wall. Off with his head. Damn! Damn! Michael Denniston rubs his eyes again. Windmills, bitterness and bludgeons are insects in his sour stomach. Tesla whispers, "Are you watching this?" Denniston hears himself answer back, "Yes, Nico, yes, I am." On the view screen, some 20 meters off the ground and revolving at a snail's pace, the yellow monolith's pulsing luminosity quickens and streaks, creating seemingly anomalous light patterns, and echoing the perplexing movements of illumination on its surface, it now emits a persistent cycle of static-laced round tones, blips, and cacophonous shifts in pitch. The exotic frequencies and aural discharges, many harmonically ambiguous, repeat and never seem to resolve. One maimed IRA bows to the monolith. "I serve the king." Another pushes him over, thrusts its remaining arm toward the monolith. "I am the king's servant." "You are not worthy of the king. Off with your head." From the base of the monolith, yellow tendrils stretch down, and as puppeteers' manipulative tethers move the chattering corpses aside. "What is that damn thing?" Denniston demands of Tesla. "Something beyond science. Perhaps a holy instrument of God? But if there were a God, why would he place his instrument, if that's what it is, on the moon? Man, if we truly are the sons of Adam and created by God, is here. Denniston was only here. We are there now. Tesla. But to what purpose? Here would be better, easier. Is he angered by our science? Their queries and any opportunity for resolution are cut short by the blare of a transmission. A choir vibrating with thunders and drang, all the IRAs as one broadcast.
He will be there, in every field and hard, waterfall and wind of earth. Soon his fingers are sharp. Closer is his descent and announcement. Closer is his origin and purpose. Greek and Egyptian knew it. They saw. All will soon.
It took root in Dee's cortex, and he cried, "He will be there!" And Pip, sotto voce, adds, "He comes on the river of night's dreaming. Its flow cannot be turned." With that, the scenes on the televisor screens come to life again, change. Denniston looks across the room at one of the robot's programmers. How can they know of Dee? We never... This is... On the lantern beach of the yellow sea far away from the tiny earth resting in the sky, a violent dance macabre. War, without knives or guns, but all the fireworks no one can rehearse for, are in it. War without blood, but other lubricating fluids flow. All manner of pushing and shoving, and even, here and there, some head-butting. Shine turns to shatter as Pip, now etched and tattooed with 100 yellow signs by the yellow tendrils, gashes Daggoo, springs and a few bronze and copper levers and nearly 24 gears with mating teeth spill out. Design unwinds its metal-shelled ways. Stubb screeches at Queequeg as he kicks him, again and again and again. 4 drill-bit fingers become crocodile harpoons as they blind an eye built to elaborate. An IRA, locked in change, runs, vaults over a brother's arm and another's wheels, and with an aerialist's fly-high scratch jumps into the sea. Before undertakes him, he shouts, "Coming, Pa!" Done murmuring to the captured queen, Starbuck finishes his mock chess game and is rubbing yellow moon dust on his limbs and diving bell head. When he is done anointing himself, he pads around on hands and metal knees examining small moon rocks. At last, here you are," he said, snatching up a fist-sized rock, which he is quick to place in the energy recycling unit on his chest. He then rises and turns. The waltz continues. One IRA plays croquet with the leg and head of one of its siblings. Starbuck, no longer shiny after his anointing, hops on the upper body of a fallen brother. "I am Lewis Carroll. You can call me Luttridge, or you can call me Sir Snark. Should you care to see a baker, bellman, banker, beaver, boojummed, but I've never been Lou or Louis or late, was not. I am the March Hare, I am the Mad Hatter, Mad March, 1, 2, 3, 4, but no Alice has come to tea time at my door, and I have worn my best top hat and dancing footwear for our tango of 2. He whirls, twirls 3 more times, dips as if he has a lover in his arms, then walks to the decapitated head unit of Ahab. Arm extended, he raises it before him, and, faceplate to faceplate, asks, "Did you know me well? Are you Tweedledee?" No reply. Up it goes, spinning and tumbling, before he re-extends his telescoping arm, catches it and holds it before him again, asking, "Are you Tweedledum?" No reply. Oh my, no friends, no friends. Starbuck's man-crafted eyes note off head and non-computing head, and a bits and pieces heap of uncompleted mission. Woe unto me, I am the last. Carting the hopelessness of all broken, Starbuck walks over and sat on the body of a fallen brother. Where, oh where? Not there, and most certainly not there. Where has my little blue caterpillar gone? A few minutes later he rescans what was delivered to aftermath, arms and drained and metal, fist and inches, no forward left in them, each and every, closed. There is no jolly old St. Nick, and no wizard lives in Emerald Oz. I tire of this. And with that he snaps off his transmission antennae, tosses it at his feet, and flips a switch. And he too is off. But he was not the last. Flask 5 remains. To mission control he roars. The carnival of tigers now sleeps. The yellow monolith stops rotating and begins reshaping itself. Effervescing, the white-hot mass convulses and extends. Remake, extend, split. Regenerate, remodel. Sudden torrent visits sliding, bursting, a peak haloed in soaring hands. Now an inversion and a paint-breath-quick series of apart, until its three-limbed and scorpion-like shape. In its centre, the sigil looks like an eye, and the topmost appendage a question mark, or a ready-to-strike scorpion's tail. The Egyptians knew! They knew! Denniston keys the microphone to inquire. Flask, they knew what? Flask 5 extends his arm, points at the enormous yellow sign. That! The Earthbred and their fates are yours in all their stations. What are you saying, Flask 5? Denniston begs. He wakes. A bruising, varispeed energy barks from the brass and copper sound projection horns in mission control. Part subsonic vibration, part white noise, part cold shriek of banshee and beast. Loud's napalm of stone fist and knife yells louder. For 3 minutes, boiled alive ears and tightly cupped hands try not to allow its reign. Teeth are gritted, and as suddenly as it was introduced, the din ceased. Overwhelmed and tortured by the searing traffic, a constellate prestissimo of sparks peel function from sequence as tubes to aid analytical processes explode. Voltage ends series, and smoke fills the air. All the monitors in mission control go black. All meters, minutes ago busy with their sweeps from left to right, stop their arcs. Dead. All transmissions from the moon are dead. Eyes heavenward. Dear Lord. Damn. A herd stung and whipped by panic, the MU team rushes to the telescope and looks up at the moon. The face of the man in the moon has changed. It's a yellow death mask. Dark side has become earth side. The moon has rotated. In the dark side blackness of its new face is the yellow sign, blinking so large it can be seen with the naked eye. Denniston and Tesla, faces contoured by what madness brings, feel the advance of its arrows. Their fingers tremble and drop memories of life. Through open windows from all over the campus, the world is one big scream. Looking out a window, Dr. Denniston sees a student he flunked last semester level a Colt revolver and shoot another student. Another one is raping a screaming girl. 2 others look to be sawing someone in half. President William Jennings Bryan's deployed defense forces are massacring students. And a billowing freshman lad, clad in only his ghillie brogues, is screaming a froth of crazed words, some of which Denniston had heard less than an hour ago from the battling IRAs on the moon. Another student shouts up to him, "Riots and mayhem breaking out all over Arkham! Run! Sounds like the whole town's gone mad! It's wounded and mad!" New York, Hong Kong, London, Berlin, and Hutchinson, Kansas, and Deer Lodge, Montana, and an inferno incinerated cottage in Hucknall Torkard. Lunacy. If Denniston could have seen it, he'd find lunacy convulsing unreasonable everywhere. Riots, a spring storm, thunder's clap, reaping brain and hearts. Compulsion. Crisis. Despair, hissing with vertigo. Darling mothers throw their infants in rivers and out windows, choke them, nail them down to catch their shrieks in golden cups, toss them in hearths, crack, consciousness, crack, method, crack, grand trivial, emotional or true, dog eat dog, cat eat cat, Abel, tooth and claw, killed Cain, snipper-snapper and wastrel turn feral, and stab or pummel whatever crosses their path. On a hushed lane in Carlow, a soft-spoken Presbyterian minister beats a Catholic priest into a bloody, ropey untidiness with a blackthorn shillelagh, screaming, "None shall know the minute, the hour," until a gang of English labourers tear him to pieces and play football with his smiling head. 3,000 miles gone, in old New York, at the 87th precinct, every man-jack in every holding cell falls under the fire of service pistols held by things once cops that shoot each other too. Their fire is accurate and continuous. Their hands are, after all, still trained. Herd fear, Brownian movement, Neanderthalers into the sea. Rivers of rats flow in streets. Caged budgies ram themselves against the bars of their gilded cages. Crime. And there is no lifeboat. Trees, robust and green hours ago, drop their now yellow and brown leaves. Jungle foliage is sacked by a bitter darkening of autumnal frost. Everywhere greyness. And warning bells find ears. Grief-stricken shoulders rattle. In Salzburg, a boy attuned to dark poetics and the abnormal hallucinations of dementia praecox, the son of Tobias and Maria Trakel, sees the black war wings of winter night, and cries. The new face of the moon has changed all creatures. No longer gentle the tides roil. Oceanic waves and cold lakes surge and boil, and all the creatures of the black deeps have now come to the surface, jumping, roiling in the affray. And they rock, and roll in gestures wild, tear and bite each other, as if some new instinct has claimed anything that could calculate or intuit. Some insane death dance had overtaken everyone and everything. Shark and sperm whale, giant squid and pike are attacked by schools of tiny fish. Schools that were colourful or blue are now yellow, the identical yellow hue as the new face of the moon. In the Serengeti, a blackened sky of vultures descends on a small village. They tear at wall and roof, falling upon the hot blood cowering within. The king's sigil, his yellow sign, the new face of the moon is flashing. Yellow rays beam toward earth. Clocks and science stop. Steam engines and the intensities and habits of faith fail. Pumps and pulleys and gears cease their motions. A hell-star caterwauling covers the earth. Windows and plates and crystal and every form of breakable everywhere shatter. Earth is beset by avalanches and shaken by earthquakes. In every forest, desert and field, bears and llama and beef creature are attacked by flocks of birds, some 10 and 10 and 10,000 thick. Insects, beetle and ant and wasp, shoulder to shoulder, mass, rising, flying, cascade, seizure, buzzing to consume tiger and rhino and kangaroo, coyote and rattler, and each other. And fear-driven men tear men limb from limb. Hitched to frenzy, many with gun and blade, or in the case of lower creatures without tools, leap from the heights of despair or drown themselves, put an end to their own life. All is as the harsh mistress Lunar commands. Even the beams and particles and coronal ejected clouds of electrons, ions and atoms of the sun are modified by her, his, influence. Still pinned to his bird's-eye view of hell, Deniston, trembling with rage and other destabilizing emotions, is in tears. Behind him, as if from nowhere, Captain Castaigne, now touched by a gnawing mental code ticking in his cortex, rattles his sabre. "Major Alden Castaigne," he croaks, "Knight of the Imperial Dynasty of America." Deniston listens to the sabre rattle, turns to see Castaigne's arm come up stiffly and jerkily. Like a robot, he has time to think. There comes the sound of a cold, ill wind that heralds a very long winter. Exhausted and ruptured by the attrition of strange alterations, even the flow of his grief now frail, Michael Deniston understands there is no doorstep to farther along. No feel a whole lot better survives this landscape. Part of a line from Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy. "We are furiously carried," floods his mind as he raises his hand to wipe his cheek. His troubled head rolls.